You're at the Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub, where we enjoy conversations with people who are engaged in the world of coaching.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Coaching Inn. I'm your host, Claire Pedrick, and today I'm in conversation with Maika Leibbrant because Gary Krotas said you must talk to each other.
Well, then I have a lot of praise and gratitude to hand Gary's way.
If you haven't heard Gary, check out his podcast. He's been on a few, so search down and see where you can find him. And if you want to get every episode as it drops, you just need to subscribe or follow the podcast on your favourite platform. Maika, welcome.
Hi, Claire. I'm a little starstruck. I've been listening to your podcast all week.
Oh, wow.
It's so
What's your
great
favourite
to be
episode?
here.
What's your favourite
I just
episode?
listened to one that you did with Mark Mercer about, oh my goodness. It's still sticking with me, but
Wow.
I also loved any time that you swapped and went to the other side of the microphone and got to be a bit more of a guest, because I found myself just constantly wondering what's going on in her head. There's so much in there I could learn from.
Wait till you hear the one that's coming soon with Oscar Trimboli, where we're talking about listening and we keep swapping. It's a good episode. Coming soon.
Love it.
So I'm curious whether you know why Gary said we needed to talk or whether that's going to emerge.
Did he tell you?
Yeah, he said you must talk to each other.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, well, let's find out then. So,
I hope I can do him justice.
I'm sure you can. So tell us a bit about your journey into coaching and about what you do now.
Great. So I live here in the States. I'm in Nebraska, which is the middle. And I grew up here, but spent most of my adult life and my career living around the world. So I was introduced to the idea of psychological assessments or psychometric assessments probably 20, 25 years ago, and have been fascinated by using science to really help accelerate people's journey toward naming what they do incredibly well. And I think it's a really great use of research. There are decades of information that we have as professionals and as scientists and as researchers and as human beings on how we can get closer to really tapping into that magic that each of us brings. But I feel like so often we try to standardize our approach and we lose a bit of the individualization in that. So I was first introduced to that almost 25 years ago, and decided that I was going to follow that curiosity about what's right with people into a career in journalism. And there's a lot of twists in these roads, isn't there? With anytime somebody tells their story of how they got there. I worked as a TV reporter for a while through undergrad. And at the same time, I was also volunteering with an organization that used a strengths-based tool in mentorship with high-performing students in the K through 12 system. So like 6-year-olds to 18-year-olds, we would partner them up with 18 to 24-year-olds for a mentorship that lasted at least 3 years, and study what happens when caring, smart, kind, intelligent people who are difference makers in their individual spaces get together and make differences on purpose. And I honestly thought it was just going to be a volunteer gig, a side hustle. and it
then?
ended up, turns out it ended up being what led me to a crucial pivot in my career away from journalism and into management consulting. I worked for Gallup for 15 years. And I was introduced to Gallup based on my work with, it was called the Nebraska Human Resources Institute. And I was introduced to CliftonStrengths as a great psychometric tool, and worked for Gallup all over the world. So I was based in London and Dubai and Washington, D.C., and I worked from home before it was cool to work from home.
Wow.
And the common thread throughout all of it was, how could I help larger systems, meaning schools or organizations or publicly traded companies or hospitals, figure out how to have a more system-wide approach of focusing on and bringing out the best in what's right with people. And I did coaching a little bit sporadically. I would have the opportunity to coach as a part of a larger initiative. And I wanted to do more of it. I got this feeling that there was a way that I could go deeper with individuals than I was. So I launched a private coaching business 2 years ago and have just been constantly surprised and reminded of how much more good things there is out there that I could be doing.
Wow. And I noticed you've got very good taste in chairs.
Are we in the same chair? Ah, it's even the same color. If you're just listening, this is the Herman Miller.
This is the Herman Miller chair. Do you know, I asked LinkedIn when my chair broke, what's the best office chair? And everybody said Herman Miller.
I'm glad you asked LinkedIn because there's people involved there. I just Googled and Herman Miller told me they were the best. I customized the color. I wanted it to match my logo. So this is non-returnable. It's kind of a pale mauve purple on the bottom.
Mine is, I don't know if I can lift mine up because I'm too old. Mine is teal.
Oh, I love it. This was my first big purchase I made as a business owner.
It's the best one. If we're going to sit for a long time. So we have many things in common.
That can't be why Gary told us that we should meet, but it's great evidence that he was right.
Hands up. Comment below if you have a Herman Miller chair.
You're in the cool club.
So there's something in your story about the combination of science and art.
There's a lot in my story about a combination of science and art. I think there's plenty of reasons why I'm this way. A lot of it probably has to do with being the oldest child in a classic sense, but I like right answers and I like truth and I like rules. And I also like furthering discoveries that people who passionately went before us made. And I feel a little bit responsible of not just starting from scratch every day. And a lot of that also is because I don't want to say raised, but taught to adult by a community of just really tremendous, bravely curious people. And much of that was when I was first introduced to the working world, post-university. I was surrounded with really cutting edge question askers. So the difference makers in my adult life were really dedicated to how do we be curious about putting some research, some awareness, some math behind what up until then I think was just a gut feeling that some great coaches got about people. And I was introduced to this world of specifically Clifton Strengths as a tool, but I think it exists a lot of other places as well. As hey, there's more to this than just hoping you're good at feeling people's strengths. You actually can study them and name them and further them and use them, on purpose in even more than just coaching. But how can you help people find a better fit? How can you help people know, not by pigeonholing them, but by opening up the abundance of being able to say, this is my best yes, this is who I actually am. And that brings a lot of fear around it. I've noticed people are hesitant to say that there's science around talent because they have a fear that it's going to limit them. But I was introduced to it as a way to open up greater partnerships, greater understanding, greater awareness, greater specialization. And that's been crucial in my, I think, positive approach to some of these tools. And I believe that every person has something within them that they can do exceptionally better than the masses. It doesn't mean that you should try to do everything at that level. And it also doesn't mean that saying no to something is limiting. It's saying no in pursuit of your very best yes.
So many questions to ask you.
Well, I have a great chair. Have a seat. We can sculpt.
I feel we need fire. and a cup of tea.
This is cozy. Honestly, Claire, I have to tell you, I have loved the combination that this podcast has of being cozy and being really like focused and intelligent. Like I've never been so comfortable and so challenged intellectually at the same time as when I'm listening to the coaching in. It's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. That's a beautiful thing to say. Might clip that and use that in our publicity.
Well, you've created something really tremendous. It's nice.
Oh, thank you. So let's start, because I'm not the coach, I'm the host, so I can start where I like. Mm-hmm. I'd love to tell me a bit more about the art and science of coaching.
The art is when you let go, and nothing really happens unless you let go.
Nice.
And that's what people crave, and that's what they come for. Yeah. It's the moment when, as a coach, you let go and you dance. And I think sometimes we let go on purpose from the very beginning, as if it's a formula, like I'm not in charge. What you just said of, I'm not the coach, so I get to decide. And there's certainly steps involved that say, okay, on paper, scientifically, I am not the driver, I'm the passenger, the client is in the driver's seat. And it doesn't always happen. That's why we have chemistry calls, right? But when as a coach, I can really get absorbed in the abundance of what the client is facing, in the possibility that maybe they don't see, maybe that I can't name or touch, but that I can feel. That's the art. And that's the rush that you get from it. The science is, to me, is the credibility of acknowledging that I am committed to doing this well, to debriefing how I do it, to continually improving my craft and my skill and my knowledge around it. In Clifton Strengths language, we separate out the idea of skill and knowledge and raw talent. And we would say that skill is the steps of an activity, knowledge is your awareness of the activity, and you do need to build those. And you should also acknowledge that they'll be amplified like a multiplication problem by natural talent. And I think there's probably something tied to this of the science of it is committing as a professional to treat this as a professional act. And the art of it is the fact that I wake up at 2 a.m. thinking about it.
Letting go that moment. I'm doing a lot of thinking around the moment at the moment, because I think there's a moment in every conversation. And one of the things that I'm going to be asking some of the people who are students with me to do is to watch recordings and to look for the moment. And I love what you said about the moment when the coach lets go, or when we both let go.
How do you define that moment? What is it for you?
For me, it's the moment where the insight comes, where something changes. Because it's almost as though the sound, for me, the conversation is da-di-da-di-da, we're talking, here's a conversation, and then suddenly you get the sound of, ah! But sometimes you don't get the sound, you only get the look, and sometimes the coach misses the look because the look is tiny. And then we don't let go. I think there's always a look.
I'm imagining like swinging on a trapeze, and you can just keep hanging on or you can let go, and it's hard to let go.
And it's scary to let go, isn't it? Because if you let go in the wrong place, it's not going to feel safe enough. So looking where to let go really matters, doesn't it, on that trapeze?
And you almost have to aim higher than you want. So I'm thinking, if I were really on a trapeze as a coach, I've never used this metaphor, but it's great. Let's roll with it. I am constantly building the net below us so that they know that it's safe to let go.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to be safe because I'm a trained tumbler, right? Like I'm not going to break anything and it's not about me. So it's not heavy. Yeah. But when I do let go, I need to set my gaze higher than I actually want to catch the other person, or if I'm the one swinging toward them, because I want to set them up really well to feel that you're not going to fall, you're going to fly, and it's going to be fine. So again, maybe this is part of the science or just the practice of the art, but I do find that I can test opportunities to let go by asking questions that my journalism brain tells me are important to ask, even if they feel too simple, that I know are going to be more of a dance, more of an opportunity to put them in charge. Things like, okay, how important to you really is this? And then it sets them up to say out loud, this really matters. When if it was just a conversation and I was just a friend, I would read that myself and I would internalize it and interpret it my way, and I wouldn't ask it out loud. But it's almost like a test of, can I let go quickly so that I can let them fly sooner?
If you're listening and you know that I often turn podcasts into training, don't worry, I have absolutely no intention of doing coaching and trapezes. But Maika might.
I didn't know this was a thing.
It's a thing now. It's a thing now.
The coaching trapeze. Also, like, I'm seeing, back to the science, I'm seeing so many graphs that you could make with the shape of a trapeze.
Wouldn't it be interesting to do graphs of where the moments are in the... Have you ever done that?
Oh, minute 37. It always happens at minute 37.
Really?
Well, no, nothing's always, but very often. And I wonder if it's cultural too, or if it's organizational cultural, I don't know. But I have noticed the shift of when somebody gets comfortable enough in a conversation that they've started to build their own solutions and draw them out, and they've almost wandered into a territory that was previously too dark of a hole. And they went into the cave and they found what they needed. When I look at the clock, it's very often between minute 36 and 38.
Well, so I've just come off a supervision call where I had some coaches from all over the world, and we were trying out different ways of working as a group, which is something I learned yesterday from another group. So we thought we'd try it out today. And I said, if you're the person who's bringing the thing, you can choose what everyone else does with their cameras. We can be cameras on, cameras off, microphones on, microphones off, whatever you choose. And he said, I want cameras off, everybody. And I said, is that including me? And he went, yeah. He said, I want to be on my own.
Oh.
So I left my microphone on, because if you turn all the other microphones off, you get a funny echo, because it's like doing a webinar when you don't feel like you've got an audience. So I left my microphone open. I didn't say anything. And I turned off my camera. And we sat there as he processed. And he looked up and looked around. And then probably only a minute in, there was this tiny breath, which I noticed. And then probably 30 seconds later, he said, right, you can come back now. And I said, what was the breath? Because for me, what I saw and sensed was that was the moment. And it was.
So how did you explore that? You just said, what was the breath, and let him go?
Yes, but he didn't need to tell us about the thing. He told us quite a lot of learning about the thing, but I still don't really know what the thing is, because it doesn't matter, because he had the moment. And one of the things that I notice when I'm developing coaches is that often they'll miss the moment. So the skill of coaching isn't what you do, it's about whether you notice the moment or not. And half the coaches listening to this are now going to have a timer that goes off at minute 36 and goes, look for the moment.
It's not your minute 36, it's theirs.
Yeah, exactly.
So Please don't. Please don't. But if you change anything because of my 37-minute comment, change your patience.
Yeah.
Because I think with coaches, and especially with people who maybe aren't showing up on purpose to professionally be a coach, but managers having check-ins, parents sitting down to dinner. I have a 6 and a 9-year-old, and dinner's torture because nobody eats anything. And I have to sit on my hands and remind myself, even as a mom at the dinner table, something happens if you stay in it long enough. 37 minutes is also where I tend to round to the next hour if somebody asks me what time it is. So there's something about that, I think, that says it's patience more than it is science.
And that's the art.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's interesting when you mentioned, I was thinking, wow, what is our job really? It's not to know the thing, like you said. I still don't even today know the thing. But you do continually build your craft in noticing the moment.
Yeah. And for me, it's more and more about seeing the moment and not hearing the moment.
Has that changed for you over time?
Because you just had a moment.
I did. I was like at this crossroads of, I have 100 questions to ask and I don't know which one to ask. I thought so quickly how I always do all my coaching over video chat. And I never give people options. I never explicitly give people options to turn off their camera. I do, I think, in the writing of my coaching invitation, say, if you prefer to take a walk, here's the audio link. But I don't bring it up. And I'm wondering if there's something in the... Oh, I had so many moments, Claire. I'm trying to pick which moment I want to share.
Moment.
Maybe you just saw a mega moment. Like, there's so many options. Well, here's the real moment. I've let go of like all the other things. It reminded me of the reason that I really left broadcast journalism was I was so skilled and committed to being present through a screen with somebody on the other side. And nobody ever prepared me. I didn't even prepare myself for the fact that it was a one-way presence. I had all these relationships with the TV anchors that I'd grown up watching on the morning shows. And it wasn't until I had a degree in my hand to say I could go do it too. And in fact, was a working TV professional. It wasn't until then that I realized, oh, they don't know who I am. Those TV anchors I'd grown up loving have no idea who I am. I've been like naked making coffee. I thought we were intimately connected with these people. And I would go out and do stories. I remember this was early 2000s. I did a story about marriage equality in the US. And I went into these people's homes. They'd been together and weren't allowed to be married for, I don't know, decades. And it was a really powerful story. And I got to know them, and they were very brave in sharing it because of the time. I mean, one of them worked in a place where they could have lost their job for telling this story. And I still have the tape, like the actual physical like VHS of this story. And I felt like there was just something that wasn't finished, because that was the best I could ever do, was tell their story and move on. I definitely did not think this is where this conversation was going. Maybe this is such a gift for me right now. When you mentioned you can see the moment, coaching for me is what I missed in the connective collaboration, the community building. That's what I thought I was seeking in telling people stories as a journalist. But it's what was missing, was seeing the moment and engaging both ways.
So you only had half the skill.
Yeah.
You were only using half the skill.
It was almost a different skill. It was, or a different deployment of that skill. It's listening for those moments so that you can craft a story is very different than listening for the moment so that you can sit on the same side of the table as the client and explore it, and then co-create what you're going to do with it.
Wow.
Thank you for that, Claire. There's a moment.
I love how in this we're both learning things that we didn't know before.
Mm-hmm.
That's
what
a
are you
beautiful
learning?
thing. The trapeze thing, honestly, that needs. I almost need to go to YouTube and watch some trapezes,
Right?
to get a sense of, because I think there's so much in there about risk and courage and vulnerability and trust, and I'm just thinking out loud here because of course I've never thought about this before.
I haven't either. Really, I don't even know where the trapeze thing came from, but that's what openness is. It came to us today for a reason. And I know you've done quite a bit with almost the musicality of conversation, right? So I wonder if there's something to that rhythmic trapeze that would build upon that.
Well, that's a different thing.
Want to go there?
Because there's a momentum in the moving, the up and down of the trapeze, isn't it? As it swings, it gets to its highest point, and then it dips to its lowest point, and then goes up to its highest point. And there are different things that you can do, I think, in different parts of that. I'm imagining if we had a trapeze artist here, and if you're a coach and a trapeze artist, you are coming to the coaching in, please.
Cozy and challenging. Perfect mix of both.
I bet there will be someone. Please email super quick because we'd love to have you. But there's something about, there are different things that are appropriate at different moments in that swinging. So one of the things I noticed about the music is that often people will check in a coaching conversation when the momentum is stopped. So when we're at the slowest point. But when you check in at the slowest point, it stops the flow because we were just about to not know what we were doing and now we really don't know what we're doing. Whereas if you check in when there's movement, the movement continues. Like a child on a swing.
I definitely understand checking in at a high point because it propels you. What do you do with the low points?
That's such an interesting question, isn't it? So one of the things I think is we have to be super courageous and not say, what's the question you think I should be asking you? Because it's their low point too. They're going to go, what?
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you've broken the fourth wall and it's like, what? You're supposed to know this.
Yeah. It's really interesting. In the supervision that I've just done, and in fact, it was so interesting. I straight away recorded a quick tips video and it'll be on YouTube soon. We got to a low point and I said to him, is there an example that will give us some insight here? And so he took what the exploration was about, looked at an example through the lens of what we were exploring, and then off we went again.
How was that demonstrating courage?
I don't think it was really. That was just a thing that came. But I think it was demonstrating trying something out, not knowing if it's going to work or not. Because at that bottom point where there's no momentum, I've moved the metaphor in my head now from a trapeze to a swing in the park.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a park right outside my house. There's swings. And there's a moment, if the swing stops moving, where actually getting it going again is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a moment when there's a little bit of movement. And if you bend your knees and lean back, you can get it going again.
Yeah.
So I think the courage is to intervene before it stops completely.
When you still have some momentum. Mm-hmm.
But only a tiny bit. And you're going to have to bend your knees and lean back. And you're not going to know if it's going to move again. But it will.
all of these metaphors are just like dancing in the coolest way in my head. And I'm thinking sometimes I've asked, that's been a moment for a courageous, almost more direct question, like, what is this really about?
Yeah.
How can we go deeper?
Yeah. I love that question, Maika. How can we go deeper? I often have coaches in supervision saying to me, how can I go deeper in my coaching? And I go, ask them, how can we go deeper?
Remembering that that's what they're there for, right? It's not a party where you have to create the space for it to go deeper. They want to.
How can we be more courageous? How can we be more stretchy? Can we be more, anything, insert any word, really.
What's the bravest thing you can say or see from where you are?
Yeah. 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 It's so simple, isn't it? And yet it's so extraordinary.
I love the swing piece because first I love admitting that there are low moments of momentum and that there should be, because if there's not, you've probably lost control before you even began.
Yeah.
And I've had clients like that where I realize, in the science of the conversation would say I'm doing just fine, I'm letting them drive, but the art is like, you're swinging without me and I'm not even in this, and you could just buy a really expensive journal and get the same thing.
or indeed you're not swinging at all.
Right. Yeah, there's no, I love that because there's back and forth with the idea of a swing. And I think I tell my kids all the time, hey, well, not so much anymore because I've been coaching more often now and they've seen me do it, and my office is at home. So sometimes they're around when I'm actually coaching, and they know that it's not only is it not allowed for mom to be interrupted, it's almost impossible. Like, they will not get my attention because my attention is my craft. That is what I give. Mm-hmm. And if you think about that attention on a swing, knowing that you're going to come to a low point and using that to plant your feet and push further, that's how you go deep.
Yeah. Wow, this isn't where I thought it was going to go either. I thought we were going to talk about Clifton Strengths. We'll have to do that on another day.
Sure thing. What was interesting to you about Clifton Strengths when you thought that was what we were going to talk about?
Just thought we hadn't talked about it. It'd be kind of interesting. But this is co-creating something new and different and beautiful. And that's what we do in coaching, isn't it?
It is. And to me, it's the same thing as talking about Clifton Strengths. I've had people ask me, and we won't go into it, but I do want to give you like a 30-second clip. I've had people ask me to describe or even teach my approach to coaching with strengths. And it's very similar to getting, systems or organizations to think about strengths. It can't be for strengths themselves. That can't be the leading role. It can be the set, it can be the orchestra, it can be the theater. But strengths are not what my clients come to me for. Now, I am very blessed and grateful for the platform that Clifton Strengths gave me, because people come to me knowing that we're going to take the Clifton Strengths assessment as a starting point, and that I'm going to have a relentlessly positive take on their potential because of the positive psychology that grew me up. It doesn't mean I'm going to be soft, and it doesn't mean I'm going to help you memorize the names of your strengths and what order they go in. But to me, it's more than a tool. It's a way to accelerate your understanding of your potential. And I think about strengths quite often not as how are we going through this exercise, but as what is it that your intuition craves in order for you to get to where you'd like to go. And sometimes where you'd like to go is just deeper, right? Like, how can we go deeper? But I know that it's my job to tie that again to something. Like, deeper in pursuit of what? What are we co-creating? Where are we headed? And then strengths can support that. Kind of like coaching for coaching's sake is really just fun, but coaching towards something that has traction.
Back to the trapeze.
Oh, we created something so much more interesting. I'm happy to come back and talk about Clifton Strengths, but this is going to be the trapeze episode.
It is. Well, what are we going to call it? Are we going to call it the trapeze episode or the episode about the moment?
Oh, that would be why Gary wanted us to meet, wouldn't it?
I think we know why Gary wanted us to meet.
As long as we don't go down in history as the swingers. There could be some interesting titling that might get us rerouted.
Yeah, let's not call it that one. Well, Maika, thank you. It's been absolutely astonishing and extraordinary having this conversation with you. What an absolute gift. Thank you.
Thank you for creating such a tremendous space, and for me particularly today for helping guide me through some unlock moments. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for what you do.
So co-creation is what it's all about, isn't it? So if people want to find out more about you, where do they go?
HelloMaika.com. Maika is Maika. I do a lot of work myself. I also have this great network of other coaches that I work with, specifically in 3 areas: executive coaching, leadership consulting, and special events and speaking. HelloMaika.com.
Thank you so much. And I hope, well, you're going to have to come back.
Yes, please.
When you come to England, Gary and me are neighbours, so you can get us both in the same town.
Is the coaching in an actual inn? Can we go to the pub?
We can go to the pub, yes, we can. It isn't. We can make it a real pub.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'll be there.
Thank you, Maika, for coming. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd love you to share the podcast with a friend or leave a comment on social media. And if you'd like to become a regular at the Coaching Inn, you can subscribe on Podbean and all major podcast channels. We look forward to welcoming you next time. You've been listening to The Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub. For more information, check out 3dcoaching.com.